Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. So,
gentlemen, how have you...
all business. How are you?
Man.
How was your week?
12 years, we can't do this right.
Every single week as well.
Yeah, every single week. We either are like really, really quiet and are just like, who's going to jump in and say the thing? And then there's just a whole bunch of dead air and then someone points it out. Or we all talk over each other.
Back for another week.
What were you going to say, George?
Top story this week. Scott Morrison's his Hydra ministry, Hail Hydra, Marvel Cinematic Universe. Don't get confused, people. Scott Morrison.
As an old reference.
A multi-headed I've been going back through the old Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. We've been going through back in release order, not chronological order. There's only one correct way to do it. The Hydra thing was definitely a bigger story than they made out. They're like, hey, there's a secret shadow government that's sort of controlling everything from behind the scenes.
Oh, hey, the Nazis still exist and have infiltrated every form of government. Discuss. And then it's like, oh, but what about superhero regulation? But
we don't want to spend more than one movie on it though, because that'd be boring.
Oh yeah. Yeah, one movie and a bit of that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show we all forgot about.
Yeah, I watched the first season of that and I was like, I'm good.
It was fine. Anyway, what is the top story that is not MCU related?
Well, speaking of shadow governments, Scott Morrison more or less has admitted that he was running a shadow government behind the scenes and took up, didn't take up, wasn't sworn into, but had secret ministerial override control over half a dozen, 5 ministries in total.
5.
And
not including his actual ministry of being prime minister, presumably.
Sure, yeah, okay, I guess 6 in total then, I suppose. Although one could argue that he didn't do his actual job of being the prime minister, so it was actually only 5. But in any case, we got him, ladies and gentlemen. And then the banner falls down from the ceiling. We got him.
Yeah.
There was the legal advice which was handed down this week by the Solicitor General, I believe it was, saying, as we all suspected, as was predicted here on this podcast, put your money on it, folks. We are super predictors. Bet the house. That, of course, what Scott Morrison did was illegal. Was not illegal, but was immoral.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty funny that, it was a thing of, as we all knew, they're allowed to do this. They just didn't because it would be fucking unethical to do so. Yeah. And there was at least a modicum of integrity maybe across previous PMs. But nope. Nope. And interestingly enough, though, the Solicitor General, when asked on this topic, I think every op-ed or analysis on this commentary sort of all said the same thing, which was he was asked a simple question around specifically the industry ministerial position, because that was the only time that we know of that Scott Morrison actually used the fact that he was also the secret minister to overrule a decision. We talked about this last week. PEP 11, they called it.
Yeah, the PEP 11 decision. Yeah, exactly.
The PEP 11 decision. Yeah, so he was just asked, what, in your professional opinion and all this sort of stuff, what legal ramifications or analysis on this, and it could simply have just been it was legal, but not ideal. And he submitted 26 pages or something explaining it. Everyone's like, oh wow, no, you didn't have to do this. So he felt really compelled to lay out over many words, this was dumb. This was bad.
He gets paid the big bucks,
not have
Tom.
Done this.
He doesn't do things for half minute. If you're the Solicitor General, you're not doing a tweet. Okay, you're giving them a 26-page minor thesis on one question.
Yeah, but it's funny to do a minor thesis on this one question where you can't be saying this was illegal and here's why or whatever, to be no, this was totally legal and within the rules. But you're a bad, bad boy. You've been a very naughty boy for the following reason.
I know any decision of mine that requires 26 pages of exposition has the utmost moral clarity surrounding it. any time that the Solicitor General needs to go out of their way to explain why the cooked shit is cooked at length, the takeaway message should be everything I did was absolutely correct. I love how the distinction and obviously, the word from the Conservative commentariat has been it wasn't illegal, therefore nothing was wrong, when they've spent the better part of 2 years criticizing Dan Andrews for exercising his legal authority during the pandemic to ask people to stay home and all this sort of stuff. They're like, in that case, yes, it was legal, but it was evil. Let's take to the streets. But in this case, it was legal and it was fine. It was totally fine. Legal is also a synonym for morally good.
There was a survey done the last couple of days where one of the questions was, which party in Victoria do you think is the more, morally, or which one do you trust more, basically, to do things legit? It was like overwhelmingly Labor. Still, I'm like,
well, you don't think Matty Guy, mobster with a lobster, Matt Guy is at the highest echelons of moral responsibility. The guy who just, in the midst of the Jobs for Mates scandal that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, appoints his best man to be the new chief of staff after the old chief of staff has resigned. As a result. He's resigned as a result of this whole deal where he directed a political donor to pay his marketing company money directly rather than donate to the Liberal Party, because then it could fall afoul of like donation caps and things like that. So Matt Guy goes, okay, this guy has to resign, and then appoints his literal best mate, his best man at his wedding, to the portfolio instead. To really make sure everything's above board, should he somehow stumble Mr. Magoo his way into the leadership, he wants to make sure that there's a high degree of moral clarity in the subsequent state government. So, Matt Guy, he's rebranded. He's rebranded as Matt because I guess Matthew is like nerdy and no one wants a fucking nerd as the premier. I don't know what the thinking behind that is, but
there's Dan Andrews as opposed to Daniel Andrews. Yeah, so
Danny boy.
Matt and Dan and Matt.
But is it also so we can better differentiate when we are approving of or disapproving of him? Because you have to be able to bust out the longer name. It's like he's like Matthew, you're in big trouble, rather than Matt. No, Matt's great.
Matthew, stop having lunches with mobsters. Matthew.
How many times do I tell you? Because then you can also go Matty, which is like, I'm not giving you the full long formal name, but I'm not happy. Because you just be like, Matty, mate. Fucking quit it with the lobster
Put the lobster down.
Yeah, put the goddamn lobster down.
Step away from the lobster.
Half in his mouth. It's like, you haven't even de-shelled it. What are you doing, man?
He's just putting a whole lobster. It's still alive. I don't think that's even been cooked, Matty.
So the advice came out. I don't think it said anything like unsurprising. It was just what we already knew.
We were all thinking. It was really bad. This is flies directly in the face of responsible governance, and you shouldn't have done it. But you were allowed to do it.
Well, we're having an inquiry, though, gentlemen. Albanese has announced that he will announce an inquiry.
Oh, wow.
It's an announcement about an announcement.
Fuck. Is that the only thing we love more than an inquiry? An announcement. And then they've doubled it up, that they've announced the announcement of announcing where they will announce an inquiry.
Here's the thing.
And fucking hell, if there's a royal commission into whether or not they're allowed to announce announcements, I think the sheer mushroom cloud of jism out of Canberra will be a sight to behold.
Yeah, it's a real...
will do very well out of it.
A real Mobius strip sucking its own cock. What I find especially interesting about the announcement for the announcement is that, like, no one actually wants, like, no one, the inevitable inquiry, whatever it is going to be, like, fundamentally disappointing. But, like, the announcement of the announcement, that always kicks goals. That is a solid 1 day of headlines in your favor. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, it's the reality. It's like when it's the promise of things to come, when you meet a new girl for the first time and you think, oh, this is all the things that our lives could be together, and then inevitably they're being with someone for 10 years, you start to see their flaws and their. What I'm saying is I'm getting a divorce, but no, my wife is lovely. She's the best. So what I'm saying is, it's like,
please don't divorce me, TM.
Please don't divorce me. I love you. I'm so sorry. What I'm saying is the inquiry can never live up to the excitement about the inquiry. It's like planning for a trip.
Have you ever watched any of the footage of these inquiries? They're boring as batshit.
They're so boring. The only hope we have is that if they actually force Scott to have to front the inquiry, we might just get some delicious sound bites of him absolutely flubbing it. And
Scott Morrison.
Yeah. Like if they actually compel him to testify. It's like, every fucking court thing around Trump, right, has been like, oh, this is boring because nothing will really happen of it. But if they had to get him in the witness stand, you'd hear some shit. You'd hear some insane garbage, right?
Especially, him like delicately trying to not perjure himself. It's interesting though that with the Scott Morrison inquiry, during his hour-long plus press conference a week or two ago, whenever it was, he did say he would cooperate with any. What was the word he used? It was like any like well-intentioned inquiry, which does give him the out of, and he said that multiple times, like any productive, positive inquiry into what's going on, I'm happy to cooperate, which does give him the out of like, if this feels...
No, it's a witch hunt.
It's a witch hunt, which they've already started trotting out that line. It's a witch hunt. Then all of a sudden he gives himself the out to like not cooperate with it, which I thought was interesting. So he knows an inquiry is coming. But
I love it how all the Liberals are just like, we just need to move on. Let's just move on.
You know how you're thinking about it? Don't think about it. We'll still bring up the red shirt scandal from Labor from 4 years ago and have more inquiries into that. That we're still happy to keep talking about ad nauseum years later. But it was literal weeks ago, okay, that the guy was Prime Minister. Everyone just get over it. Just move on.
Yeah.
It's boring. It's so boring. That's why it's the number one news story of this whole week. And Waleed Ali is churning out shit posts about it because no one's interested. The people at the IGA, as Barnaby Joyce said, are more interested in talking about other things like modular nuclear reactors. No one's interested in this sort of bullshit. That's why it's been the number one news story for 2 weeks.
So, yeah, I mean, Waleed Ali posted an opinion piece in the Sydney Morning Herald and probably the Age as well, I'd imagine.
I have to say, it was the most like Sydney Morning Herald type think piece. It was just like and he's appropriately getting like completely fucking roasted for it. I saw a great tweet from Nadine von Cohen. It was like Peter Van Waleed Onsel and Ali or something like that. It was just like that was the whole tweet. It was just like it's exactly what it is. It's a like institutionalist kind of like center right think piece that has a whinge about liberal hand wringing over like what? Yeah, we all agree it was like not illegal, probably like immoral and fucked up. But like, why is everyone making a big deal about it? Here's Waleed Ali with his succinct fucking legal analysis of the issue, and everyone was just like, "Have you ever seen that meme where it's just the nope button and everyone just goes nope?"
Oh yeah.
That was the internet's reaction to this fucking think piece. All of Twitter just went nope.
So his main argument is that it's a waste of time, basically.
Yeah, that the Solicitor General's comments won't. Yeah, like what would an inquiry change about how the Solicitor General has already sort of advised that the situation is? Like, it's not like the inquiry's going to have us then find out that, oh no, it was illegal, apparently. Seems to be the thing. But on the flip side, it's like, well, look, inquiring into something like this, Waleed, is maybe how we see more of the flaws in the fact that this was allowed, and that maybe then it shouldn't.
And maybe we could form recommendations for legislation that we could put into effect to make sure it doesn't happen again. Like the whole idea of like, well, I was cleared of the murder, so there's no point investigating is like such weird circular logic. It's like, no, governments can walk and chew gum at the same time. Okay. We can conduct an inquiry. It's not the same people. Okay. It's just like three people in Canberra in Government House. And it's just like, they're the government. I know that's maybe the impression that you might have gotten given the previous occupant of the, of the parliament. Okay. But turns out there's a whole government apparatus. You can have people looking into an inquiry over here. We can have another inquiry over a royal commission into the Robodebt scheme over there. And turns out government can do all of these things at the same time. It's not wasting time, okay? Because it's not the same people.
It is. it is
his
concurrent
advice.
time.
Yes,
It is like
it's all at the
everything's
same
happening
time.
all at once. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think one of his points was that the Solicitor General did make recommendations on how to fix it, which is just you need to make it legal that you publicly publish ministerial appointments.
But I don't think that gets to the heart of the issue. And Malcolm Turnbull was like incendiary about this. He's like, it undermines our entire system of government. And like, while yes, it may not have been illegal, it does completely undermine what we mean, the spirit of representative democracy. Like, and maybe we should spend more than 20 minutes on that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And it's just fascinating as well. Like, yeah, because I guess that's a good point, Adam, in the sense of like the Solicitor General has already made recommendations. So it's like, okay, we can talk about this, but so do you need to publish like a however many words article of like, I don't know, just with like where people probably won't read beyond much of the headline, just sort of saying like, why are we doing this inquiry? It's like, no,
boring.
That op-ed isn't like fucking worth it. Like, seriously, what has that achieved?
And it's so funny because the thrust of the article that Waleed put out, I'll give you the title so you guys can lambast it online along with us. Why another Morrison inquiry? ? If it's to humiliate Labor's enemies, it would be political brutalism. As though the Liberal Party hasn't just spent the last 2 decades being a rabid, rabies-infected attack dog foaming at the mouth over anything that might be construed as, forward progression on any number of things, be it, labor rights or,
that was literally like Tony Abbott's first
energy policy,
was just reaction against anything that happened over the last 6 years.
Yeah. And considering like how low key and chill the Albanese government has been in comparison, I think they can hardly be accused of political brutalism. It's like, have you met Tony Abbott? Have you met like the people who up until very recently were the opposition for whom you are arguing? Like, have you, I just can't stand these like institutionalist, they're all really like annoying me. This Waleed Ali, David Spears, Peter Van Onselen, what's her name from the Herald Sun, like this very much this institutionalist, even when Labor's right, they're still kind of wrong. Kind of like, I remember when on election night, who was it that was asking Tanya Plibersek? Was it Lee Sales?
Lee Sales or Annabelle Crabb. I remember they were both on the panel. I can't remember which one of them asked.
I'm pretty sure it was Lee Sales, like saying like, do you want to apologize for only winning minority government, basically? And Tanya Plibersek was like,
it was being like,
no,
like, look,
we won,
there's so much of a swing. Yeah, it was like so much of a swing to the independents. Like, so what has Labor done wrong? Our guy just won.
Our guy, we're in charge now. We won.
Yeah.
We won this. But yet the mainstream media, MSM, mainstream media,
the mainstream media, George.
I hate that whole, or like all of Trump's lackeys have completely hijacked the terminology around this. But yeah, the mainstream media seems more interested in like preserving, I don't know, political politeness than they are in actually getting to the bottom of like what could have been a really dark chapter in Australian political history. And they're like, oh, why are you going to go on about that? Let's just move on. Let's get back to the good old times of criticizing Labor for energy policy. Like let's talk about modular nuclear reactors. Like,
it's like fucking let's keep debating the same old bullshit rather than talking about like actually maybe changing how systems work for the betterment of everyone else.
It's just more
really
about
against
the news cycle, right? Like it's the same thing in the US. Like if they can get as much heat out of it as they can, and then like the opinion piece is just
dog shit.
Well, it's there to get reads.
But that's the thing. If you're so interested in making sure that this story makes a swift political swift exit from the political news cycle, why are you writing a demented 500-word opinion piece in order to capitalize and get clicks for your institution, Waleed? Like the whole thing, like the idea that someone would write a piece saying, let's move on from this thing is just like so backwards. And so like, that's the only way I know how to describe them is institutionalists. They're more concerned with like,
it's what they're used to writing and thinking and reading and like arguing about rather than kind of moving on.
But they're so
like they
busy.
So want us to do from other things.
But they're so busy like reading, and I'm sure like Waleed Ali reads Patricia Carvallis and Patricia Carvallis reads Peter Van Onselen and Peter Van Onselen reads Waleed Ali. Like I feel like they're busy in a room, somewhere over at the ABC just like huffing each other's farts, that they have no clue, they're no connection to what anyone else, like this is a big story. Like look on Twitter, maybe speak to a human being who doesn't work at a media organization and see what they think about this. People are very unimpressed, and it's had an impact on Dutton's favourables. Dutton's favourables, which were already low, have gone down further as a result because of his inaction on this topic. You can't say that that's just like a media beat up by the media organizations that we all work for. Like, I don't know. It's like clearly the public cares about this, and it was actively not good for democracy. Like, maybe talk about that aspect of it.
I think one thing it does, like, because even in America as well, it's one thing people don't like is seeing, corruption or, whatever you want to call it, unethical behavior in their political system. And it just damages the whole system as a whole, because you end up getting people pushing to the far right and going to the like Palm United Party or whatever else, fringe parties, because they mistrust the big dogs.
But the argument for that is to have what we're advocating for, which is an inquiry, political accountability for the things that have gone wrong, for the things that are unethical, for the things that, even if they are not expressly illegal, to have a transparent system of government that goes out of its way to get to the bottom of these things and then publicize the findings. The way to stop people from diverging from the political center, which is what these guys seem to be so very scared of, is not to just like bury it. It's to excise it. It's to restore. That is an argument for restoring trust and faith in government, not just like pushing it under the rug and moving on, right?
Did you hear that this is a Victorian news topic and sidebar, but did you hear that the class action against the Vic government for Lockie number 2 is going ahead? They couldn't quash it.
Oh,
so
you're saying the second lockdown in, what was it, 2020, late 2020?
So there was a class action that came out.
My God.
That basically, we talked about it at the time. It's a class action from business owners, other people that were affected because of the failure of the hotel quarantine system. And that was, they were trying to fight whether or not they could even proceed, basically. But the government lost out on that. So now I think the class action will proceed, and they'll have to fight it out in court.
See, the thing is like, I see that and I go, isn't that the exact kind of political brutalism that Waleed Ali was just railing against? Deliberately using the apparatus of government to attack one's political enemies. Like, isn't that just what he was criticizing? Like, isn't that the exact?
It's a class action by the people.
And who do you think the business owners all donate to, and which side of politics they're on? If you had to guess,
and everything,
Fun times.
Now,
there is a discussion.
Were you wanting to talk about the Governor General's thing and all this? Yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily. I think that we're drawing dots here that are very far apart. But there's been talk lately of the Governor General's role and relationship with Scott Morrison and how transparent that is, and perhaps another reason why we need an inquiry.
John Kerr, you piece of shit, John Kerr.
And we talked about this at the time, but basically back in April was a story that broke around the Australian Future Leaders Program, which was basically a foundation or company that didn't exist
prior to its receiving funding from the federal government in any meaningful capacity. So the Governor General, David Hurley, personally lobbied the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, about this leadership program that was later allocated more than $18 million in federal funding. And I believe my take on this at the time was like, hey, my wife works writing grants to get money from the government, and it is a long and laborious process that takes months of review, and when you get the money, there's a whole acquittal process. This is what we did with the money, here's how that all works. Like, there is a very detailed process normally when getting money from the government, and that's normal and to be expected. I would expect as a taxpayer that there is a rigorous process in place there. That was not the case with this Australian Future Leaders Foundation Limited organisation, which without a tender, without any sort of open, transparent process, was awarded $18 million. So it opened in as a charity in April 2021, and as of, well, at least of April this year, yet to run any leadership programs. But it did receive this broad swathe of money, which was advocated for by the Governor-General, and the cause was taken up and championed by Scott Morrison. Now, in the light of the fact that Scott Morrison was secretly in charge of the Hydra Ministry, I think Crikey has asked some questions this week, and I think deservedly so, about whether there was any undue influence from the Prime Minister in making sure that this grant got actioned. And I think it's fair to question if this was in any way related to the Governor-General staying stum about this whole process as it was unfolding, the multiple ministries. Like, I think there is a question there that deserves to be asked. Thoughts?
Well, as I said, I think there's two dots there that we're drawing a long line between, but maybe you're right. Maybe there's a question we can ask.
I don't think, like, I'm not saying anything corrupt happened necessarily. What I'm saying is there seems to have been very little oversight about this grant, which we knew at the time when it was reported on in April. But given the new context that we know about the unprecedented power grab from Scott Morrison, I think there should be an investigation as to, was this a quid pro quo? I'll stay quiet about this whole multiple ministry thing if you support one of my favorite charities. Like, it's not dollar on a canvas bag political corruption, but I think it is part of the normal functioning of government. Is like, hey, I'll help you out, you help me out. This is my thing.
All right.
I think the question deserves to be asked. What do you think, Tom?
I think it certainly just shows a not a great picture of the relationship between a prime minister and the Governor-General. Like, it's similar to the secret ministries thing, of where it's like, I don't think anything against the rules has kind of happened or anything like that. There's no evidence to suggest that anything untoward sort of went down, but it's the kind of thing where it's like, we should maybe look at that, because is this okay? This is maybe something we should think about. Like, I don't know, that should there be more accountability over these kinds of things, or more official record, or because the timing is also just oddly convenient.
Yeah, like maybe it's not corrupt.
All these happening around the same time, like, it's sort of it seems like their relationship doesn't pass the sniff test yet.
I would argue that this would have happened either, like, I would have argued that the grant thing would have happened potentially, pandemic aspects aside.
But this is the thing. It's like, because the relationships are so complicated, now there is a question. You know what I mean? Like, if this all went through a transparent process and there was like a score matrix, and this bid, and it was compared against other bids for this pot of $18 million, and it won out handily over the other bids that had a score of 86 out of 100 and 47 out of 100. Like, if there was a transparent process like that, then it'd be easy to tease it apart. I think the problem with the political machinery as it stands is that, this is normal boys club politics stuff. It's not strictly illegal, but like, given what we now know about the Morrison super ministry, like, should it be? Like, that's the thing with corruption. A lot of corruption isn't necessarily like I said, dollar signs on a canvas bag. I give you this and you give me my trade job in New York. Like, it's a lot of corruption isn't like that. It's like people doing favors and patronage and that sort of stuff. And while it's legal, I still think it is, whilst it's not illegal, I do think it is immoral. And I think it adds to the erosion of people's faith in democracy when they see deals like this getting done behind closed doors. That I'm not even saying that the foundation isn't worth it. They might do good work. That's yet to be proven. But what I'm saying is there are definitely causes out there that could have taken this $18 million and used it for unambiguously good things using a transparent process. And that's not what we got here. So I'm surprised it hasn't been a bigger deal in the media, considering all of the news stories about the Governor-General and Scott Morrison in recent weeks. But you'll be pleased to know that the centrist Albanese government has put any questions about the Governor-General directly to bed, given it a good back rub, and read it a nice bedtime story and put it directly to bed. And I guess that's what you do when you're the Prime Minister and you've got a Governor-General, is you just say, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir. Please, sir, can I have not a double dissolution? Please.
Well, yeah. I was gonna say maybe a bit like that, and also probably a thing of like, all right, let's not go nuts. We're trying to do good things, but let's not be too ambitious.
Let's not go nuts. No. Let's not go nuts with accountability.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the question needs to be raised, and it will almost certainly be memory hold by this time next week. So, yay, politics. Yay.
Well,
you know what would get the news cycle going, guys? Let's go war with China. That'll get the news pumping. 24/7, 7 days a week. That's 24/7 is 7 days a week. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. News on a war with China. That would get everything very exciting.
Again, that was the plot of a Bond film.
Was it?
Literally this. Yeah. Or literally that. Tomorrow Never Dies. The villain runs a media organization, and he's like, if I can convince Britain and China to go to war in the South China Sea, I will. The news cycle will be mine, and I will be rich.
This is obviously a pre-Trump storyline.
Late 90s, but it was sort of a thing of that's diabolical, and not in a Bond villain diabolical way, where it's usually like, I've built a crystal laser on the moon or something. This is like, oh no, that's actually a semi-believable, feasible, and actually possible. Yeah, that's evil.
Yeah.
That is pure evil.
I mean,
it was good.
Aren't we just describing the business model of cable news networks is to
pretty much
create outrage in order to be able to cover it? Like, surely that's we're just describing like CNN and Fox News, right? Like,
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, Jonathan Price, Elliot Carver was the character. He was awesome. Yeah. Anyway, what's really happening in the South China Sea?
So this week, I mean, this is you put context around this. Like this week, there's been news or talk around whether Australia will expand its F-35 fleet, potentially acquire B-21 stealth bombers. B-21 stealth bombers, or B-2. Yeah, I think you're right. Stealth bombers. Let's just call them that. I don't know what the product number is. From the US, about 20 of them.
It's all right. Neither does the Australian government. They're just buying them hand over fist.
They're just buying it. And
what do you got?
That's a whole separate conversation about this actual story. But the point being is, Australia wants to sort of arm up to, have long range strike capability, which is basically a bulwark against any potential Chinese aggression in our region.
I wonder what portion of the American economy is just like forming relationships with other governments in order to sell them weapons. Like, I really do think that is a huge part of American GDP.
Yeah, but no, B-21. So the B-21, the current one is the B-2. The B-21 is the future bomber that they're currently developing. So it's
future bomber
secret.
In that it bombs the future for all young millennial Australians.
Yeah. So it's not the current bomber that they're using, but would be some other sort of undeveloped program that no one knows about yet. But if you think that a war with China would be fun and dandy and stuff, just think about a couple of things.
I was going to say, I didn't, but
there are some people that do.
Peter Dutton's like, fucking let me at him. Oh, fucking come here. Let me have him.
Particularly a war with Taiwan and China. Think of it that way. One, microchips. Enough said. Second thing, though, there was a report this week, and this is the actual news story, which I'm getting to. A report came out from RMIT, or a study from RMIT University, that said that basically any war in the South China Sea would threaten 90% of Australia's fuel imports and supplies, and we would run out after 2 months.
Ouch. That's bad.
That's one spicy meatball.
Given where all the fuel and ships, because we don't have a merchant navy in Australia, so we're incredibly reliant.
Can you explain that to me? What a merchant navy is? I wasn't sure.
So a merchant navy, my understanding of that is that it's basically a fleet of ships and men that are sort of either indirectly or directly employed by the government to do things on their behalf, run supplies, drop things off. The
Right,
point
so-
being is
so
that
currently
whether the ships are owned in Australia. We don't have a lot of ships
Right.
that are owned in Australia. They're from Hong Kong. They're from whatever other port there is around the world. That because every ship will be registered in a port. We don't have a lot of that in Australia. They're registered from overseas. So
it's a lot of private companies shipping stuff here for profit.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
that's the arrangement that we have for them. Is
It's the model.
We
Yeah.
pay you for goods and you ship us goods. So the weakness, as I understand it from what you're saying, of not having a merchant navy is if there is some conflict and international companies decide there is an untenable risk in them sending ships to us, they just won't do it. And then we'll be in the shit. Right? Okay.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Although they'll have to take massive long way rounds, which double the
Drive
cost
costs
of everything. And
yeah.
Right.
yeah, if you think inflation's bad now, think about what it'll be like if that happens.
Well, and also if you think inflation's bad now, think about it if there's no fuel because
Or no
and
products
keep in mind,
from
I'm
China.
saying a war with China. All I'm saying, what it really is just Taiwan versus China. Even if just that happens, this still
And then suddenly, even when people think about I work from home, I don't need to drive to work. I could handle a fuel shortage. It's but all the trucks that move all the shit around that you either buy online in courier services or to supermarkets or whatever, or medical supplies, all that sort of stuff that all uses fuel. So unless we can snap our fingers and have done something about, electric vehicles 20, 30 years ago, bad.
I really
Very
don't
bad.
understand why there's so much push from the fossil fuel industry against electric cars, given that there's so many strategic benefits to weaning ourselves off foreign fuels or off fossil fuels rather.
Money.
This whole I know money, but there's also money to be made in batteries, in domestic production of electric cars, in there's other money to be made. I just feel like it's you look at what's happening between Russia and Europe now with the impending sort of gas crisis that's going to come up in European winter towards the end of this year because Russia's not shipping across all of these or it's greatly reduced the amount of natural gas and fossil fuels that it's shipping over to Europe. Isn't there a massive strategic national security reason that we shouldn't, rather than being reliant on countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran, which are bad actors in their region for fossil fuels, isn't there a strategic reason for us to wean ourselves off them? As well.
We can, yes. There is, and I think we'll end up doing that if we want to get to net zero. But the issue is that you can't do that overnight.
But they haven't been trying to do it overnight or over 30 years.
They haven't been trying to do it over many nights.
Well, the situation is that if there is a conflict with Taiwan and China, will potentially happen in the next sort of 5 years, I'd imagine, or maybe 5 to 10. And I don't think we've got enough time to really fix that.
Yeah, I don't know why it's
our energy mix until during that time.
I don't know why it's not a bigger discussion around, the national security implications of green energy. I don't know why that's not a bigger part of the discussion. It seems like it's only been part of it very recently with the Ukraine crisis that we're even discussing it in those terms. So it's no, we're at a strategic weakness if we are completely vulnerable to fossil fuel imports to sustain us that leaves us at a disadvantage.
We've been like that for it's been a couple of years now where this has been a massive issue. There was an agreement they secured under Trump with Australia where we would start using the US stockpile if shit went real bad. But if there is
our Australian,
if they are also in a conflict, then that
exactly
starts to get a bit awkward.
The thing about having a strategic fuel reserve in another country is that it's not in your country. So us having all of these strategic fuel reserves in the US is kind of useless if we actually are.
We can't get it here.
If we find ourselves in a situation where we need strategic fuel reserves and they're in another country, I think the other country might just go, yeah, I might have a bit of that. No, sorry. I know the country's burning down, but that's Australia's. It's got they've put it in the fridge and they've got a label on it. There's nothing we can do.
It's a good little analogy. The thing as well is it's not just oil. So previously we've been talking about what's our oil supply, but the issue being is there are only 2 refineries left in Australia. So in terms of the actual usable content from that oil, the petroleum, it's like even if we had 1 billion barrels of oil sitting in the outback,
we couldn't process
or wherever, we couldn't process it. So there's a lot of differing issues that need to be sort of either you compensate with it by mandating electric cars by a certain date and try to ramp up production. But then we don't manufacture cars in Australia. And you can't get cars at all at the moment, because the only cars we can get at the moment are from China.
But I think like all you need to make that happen is like strategic investment in those industries. Like if like all the government needs to do is say, we're going to incentivize, we're going to do tax cuts, we're going to give money to places that manufacture these things here locally in Australia. Like it's a matter of interest in the problem. But if you look at the media, especially the Murdoch media over the last 10 years, they'll tell you that the biggest problem facing us is fucking wind farms. Well, we're transitioning to renewables too quickly, and that's why Adelaide went into a blackout, like all this sort of shit. Like it doesn't do anything to address the actual problems or even fix, like have a solution to them. It seems untethered from not just the global warming angle of it, but also the national security element of it as well. Like if all Australians were driving or on their way to driving electric cars in the next 5 years, this would be much less of a concern, right? Like the Ukraine crisis.
Not so much. It wouldn't be a silver bullet, because fuel is used in many different ways.
Less of a concern than it otherwise would be. I know fuel's used in the production of steel and all these other industries, but if consumer behavior in Australia stops because we can get 10% of our refined fuel imports, like that's going to be a really big spanner in the works for the Australian economy. Like that is maybe a non-recoverable event for us.
Ironically enough, happen? Angus Taylor's had, previous to the current Labor government, had the power for 6 years, 3 years, whatever it was, and they've done basically the coalition's been in power for 9 years, and they've done nothing about this.
Yeah, but they're always whinging about China. We're going to go to war with China. Like, they're beating the drumbeat to war. But any of the actual practical on the ground measures that would be used to mitigate the effects of that have just not even been discussed.
Even ones that are massively fossil fuel, that are pro fossil fuel.
Right.
They haven't even done any of them. They've done nothing. They've just done nothing.
Right. Oh, so we're in agreement.
Yeah. But yeah. So anyway, that's one study from RMIT. But
so watch that space. That'll surely time.
I mean, I always, when in discussions with boomer members of my family, it's fucking China's coming and we're gonna have the latest fucking greatest submarines and all this sort of shit. My response has always been like, hey, if we're actually in an armed conflict with China, we're losing. Like, forget about like the actual like more likely scenario of, China going to war with Taiwan. But like, if what you're talking about is all out war between China and Australia, we lose 6 times a week and twice on Sundays in that conflict. I didn't even think about the fuel dimension of what that means for shipping lanes and stuff through there, because the vast majority of goods to and from Australia is directly between Australia and China. So it seems for all the hand-wringing that we've done about and all the drumbeat about going to war, it's like we're actually not prepared for the actual consequences of what that means at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you say, Adam, they did sweet fuck all in the nearly decade that they were in power in order to mitigate or do anything about that. Now, we mentioned before, unless there was anything else you guys wanted to mention around China, that, the government loves an announcement. Just generally, all governments, like, Labor, Liberal, whatever, they all love an announcement, just a little cheeky announcement. And on Thursday this past week, they had an announcement into a royal commission, because we all know they love a royal commission.
That is the top tier of announcements as well. Yeah. That's like the A grade, like bring me your finest bottle of champagne of of announcements as well. So
the more royal, the better. Like, the more kind of antiquated, pointless, archaic and photographed in compromising positions with known sex traffickers, the commission, the better. They just love a really royal commission.
Extremely
so
royal. So royal.
So
Her Majesty's. What's
Her Majesty's? Is that what Scott Morrison called his many jobs?
Her Majesty's Secret Service Royal Commission of heretofore of Order of Australia.
Yeah. So yes, the Albanese federal government has announced that they'll be doing a royal commission into the scheme referred to as Robodebt that occurred under the coalition government. Ran from about 2015 to November 2019. And it was, for just a quick catch up, it was an automated debt recovery program focused at Centrelink, our Australia's welfare apparatus of the government, and it was, rolled out using like data matching algorithms to try and determine whether or not someone had been paid more via their unemployment or student benefit, etc. kind of payments out of our welfare system as to whether they were paid too much and owed money back. And yeah, we've talked about it before in the past. It was an absolute, I believe the technical term is shit show, but at best failure. It did raise something like $1.7 billion in debts from a large amount of people, 400,000, but the federal court approved a settlement. What year was this? I don't have a year in front of me, but part of that ruling around, I think they found around 750 million of it was wrongly recovered from a large portion of people. So it led to things like suicides. So it was real bad, the Robodebt scheme, and well overdue a sweet Never Sweats commission. Into it. That was another royal joke for those of you playing at home. Because the certain someone never sweats and likes to hang out in weird pizza joints instead of being photographed with sex traffickers.
He actually physically couldn't sweat at that time, if I recall. Yeah.
At that time, yeah. Because of the war.
Because of the war. We all understand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is interesting that so the amount raised is 1.73 billion and then the settlement is 1.8 billion. So it gives you an indication of how sort of wrong-headed the whole thing was. This was an election.
It's what they call a baller return on investment.
Yeah, I know. That's a real strong ROI on that one. Thanks, guys. But yeah, so it was an election promise from Labor that they were going to institute a Robodebt Royal Commission, and they obviously fulfilled that, or at least announced it. The estimated inquiry cost to be about $30 million, or what is that? One jet, half a submarine. So I think we're good. The
1/5 of a submarine, just the forward section.
Yeah, just the periscope. Yeah. So,
and it's not even watertight.
No. Well, you need the rest of the submarine around it to make it watertight.
Yeah,
so
make it watertight. You're going to have a very wet periscope. You can use it to look above the surface, but your eyeballs will be very moist.
You'll be soaked. Yeah, you should use it with scuba gear, I think. So, I'm fine with the Royal Commission into the Robodebt scheme. I think it's going to unearth a mountain of corruption, and it is interesting that the coalition has long said that there's no need for a Royal Commission, arguing that the matter had been dealt with by the settlement, which is exactly the sort of thing that a party would say if there was absolutely a need for a Royal Commission to uncover the wrongdoing.
I don't think you need to take me to court for that theft. I don't think you should. No, of course I don't. Of course I don't think that.
And it is especially interesting given that the scheme ran up until November of 2019, when I know for a fact that this, I have inside information, shall we say, from a debt collection firm that was bidding for the business at the time, that the relevant minister, I believe it was Greg Hunt at the time, was informed about the problems with the scheme, the fallout that would ensue, the wrongheadedness of it. Like, they were even given steps to mitigate it. and ways of introducing humans into the process for review, because I know someone who was part of that debt recovery firm who made those proposals directly to the minister. So it is for sure a thing that they knew about at the time. And I believe the question from Greg Hunt at the time was, what would Labor have done in this situation? It was just completely concerned with the political aspects of what was going on rather than actually fixing the problem over which he had responsibility. So I think there's a lot to learn from this inquiry, and I'm excited to see the results.
A Royal Commission, for those playing at home, the difference is that it is actually ordered by the Sovereign. So this will be David Hurley, funnily enough.
And it beats, and we know it beats a straight and a flush.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
It has, so once it's started, it cannot be stopped by the government. You can't put a brake on that. So yeah, it has greater powers than a regular commission of inquiry.
And George, just a correction, sorry, from what you said before.
Tudge. It was Tudge, not Greg Hunt.
The Ministers of Social Services who oversaw this, that was the ministry that would have been it, Social Services?
The minister was Alan Tudge. I misspoke. It was not Greg Hunt.
Oh, well, I was just looking up who the previous ministers for social services have been over the past decade. And during the Abbott, then Turnbull, then Morrison government, there was, so from the 2015 period to 2019, the first one, from the 23rd of December 2014 up until the 21st of September 2015 was Scott Morrison.
That was afterwards. Yeah. So it
started in 2015, didn't it? The scheme? Didn't they just say before? July 2015 to November 2015?
That was when the
Robodebt was running?
Alleged abuses occurred. I don't know. Well, yeah, anyway. The minister at the heart of that story was Alan Tudge. So
okay. He's not listed here at all.
It might be listed under another portfolio that it was.
Another portfolio.
That it was under.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's probably maybe why Scott Morrison's government was saying, no need for a royal commission.
The whole point of that story...
When you're one of the ministers in social services during the period, I wouldn't want a royal commission either.
The whole point of that story is that the government had, explicitly been forewarned by private companies as to what was going on. So there's no way of saying, they didn't know what was happening or they didn't have any oversight over it. We know for a fact that they were warned, they had knowledge of what was occurring and what was going wrong, and they still pursued it up until 2019.
Yeah.
Which is after public reporting was happening about the story. So it's concerning.
Yeah. And so yes, that'll be, how'd you put it before? A spicy meatball.
I didn't do the Italian accent, Tom. That's racist.
If you're watching, it'll probably be boring as batshit, but I'm sure the bits that will be interesting will be witness testimonials.
You always got to
very personal and
you got to cliff notes that shit. It's what the TikTok generation have kind of almost gotten right. Is that you don't just sit there and watch the whole boring thing. No, you get the highlight reel. It's just maybe we should be doing that over royal commissions like Robodebt and not defamation and abuse cases between celebrities. Maybe we shouldn't just be fixating on that. We haven't talked about any of that because it's not really worth it and not really our area, but it's kind of fucked how everyone's like, no, let's get the highlight reels of court cases between...
love a bit of Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, just synergy, in the courtroom. It's...
It was terrible. The fact that was televised was disgusting, and that everyone was standing Johnny Depp was quite horrific.
Yeah, that whole thing was weird. Just to confirm, so Alan Tudge was the Minister for Human Services from 2016 to 2017. So it was during that period.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, during that period. Oh yeah, human services and social services are different portfolios,
I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
So people who need social services aren't humans, Tom.
Or humans don't need social services? Oh, that's telling.
But it's all right because he was the Minister for Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs thereafter. So it's another classic case of just failing upwards with high velocity.
Hang on. Yeah, I was going to say he was then the Minister for Citizenship and stuff. Was that during the great dual citizenship fiasco?
It might have been. It was probably around that time, 2017 to 2018.
I don't. But also
that
I think that portfolio has absolutely nothing to do as to whether or not other people hold dual citizenship. That was a facetious comparison on my part.
I appreciated it. I'll allow it, but watch yourself, McCoy.
Yeah, I'll see where this goes. But this better be going somewhere, councillor.
We've decided to now cross the seas to our cousins over in America.
We're still speaking about debt.
Still speaking about debt. Yes, very good. Joe Biden's administration has announced a student loan forgiveness plan that could help more than 40 million Americans.
Okay.
So, fulfilling a campaign promise, Mr. Biden is erasing $10,000 US in federal student loan debt for those with incomes below $125,000 a year, or households that earn
less than $250,000 as a household.
Household together, yeah. So, and there's also an additional US $10,000 for those who received Pell Grants to attend university. So, it's probably not as broad of a debt cancellation as some people are hoping for, but I think for many American households, this is going to be a massive win. And Republicans are predictably falling over themselves to criticize the Biden administration for doing what can only be described as an unambiguously good thing that is means tested.
It's gonna totally cause inflation, George. They're gonna go spend it on TVs. It's like it's not money that it's a debt cancellation. It's not like they've all of a sudden have got $40,000 in their bank account that they can just go and fucking spend.
Worst case scenario, it allows people that have been struggling with debt to be able to participate in the economy. So I guess if that's inflationary, not having people, for decades having to constantly make repayments that they can't afford. If that's inflationary in some small way, fine, I might concede that point in that the money that's being spent on servicing your debt is now being deployed elsewhere. But I think that's a good thing, surely, is to not have people be debt slaves their entire lives. I don't know.
Yes. I mean, the thing I've been wondering about this, because you know me, I'm the roll out the guillotines crazy one of the show. That where,
and we love you for it, by the way.
Thanks, Adam. I appreciate that. When we come to eat the rich, you will be spared.
Your death will be swift and painless.
My first thought was sort of like, oh, you're only canceling $10,000 of their debt. Just cancel all of it. Just do that. Then you have more go the whole hog. We need to be more ambitious.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd be interested because again, I don't understand funny money as to whether or not how you guys would feel about this, because I just sort of looked it up then, just getting some average numbers, and it seems the average student loan debt that from my very quick Google search, is anywhere between $30,000 to $40,000. So it's around a third to a quarter of what the average student loan debt is. I don't know. Not enough? How do you guys feel about that?
I think it's great. I agree with you that if you're going to bother to cancel student debt, you should just do it.
Just do it.
I think the means testing thing is interesting because it's like, clearly it is a very neoliberal approach to the whole thing. It's like, we're going to do something good, but not so good that everyone benefits.
Yeah.
I understand not wanting to spend money on people that are rich and can afford to service the debt, but I do think it creates a weird sort of, I don't know. I think you're getting the worst of both worlds in that you don't get the credit for doing the big thing, and you also get half the people that still have debt still annoyed at you for doing the good thing. So, I think it's good. It could be better, but I don't think that there's ever been a precedent in American history where they've canceled student debt like this. And it also needs to be, I think, accompanied with reforms to the education system that prevent student debt from being run up that high in the first place. So it's like, yes, it's good as a one-off cancellation, but it doesn't do anything to prevent the universities or future generation of kids racking up all this debt in the future. Yeah. But it is a precedent to set, the precedent that the government can just walk in one day and cancel it. And I don't think people will forget that. right? So you go, well, they cancelled it once. Maybe they could cancel it again.
Well, it's interesting. Like it's like they've cancelled it once. They could cancel it again. But also on the flip side, it's like, oh, so the government can just do that.
Just
say
make our lives better.
Like they can just, if the government want it's a thing of like, by doing this, by taking this inch, you realize that the mile's there.
Yeah.
As well, kind of, right? So like, they could just cancel all of it. Like, you've done a little bit of it. You could just do more at any point.
There is
you've taken that genie out of the bottle. That genie's out of the bottle.
There's a conceptual dam that gets broken when you do something like this. So it's like, well, if we could do it once, why not do it again? Why not do it for more? Why not do it for other areas of the economy as well?
The question this article raises, which I think is probably a valid one here in Australia as well, is that, I mean, you can talk about, what about the debt and the economics of the debt? But, I mean, the other question is, why is there that much debt in the first place? Why is the university sector so, like, why does it cost so much to get a degree? And that's the same here in Australia, where, I mean, wages at universities are really good. At the super at universities is really good. They pay really well. And you could argue, well, there's a benefit to that and they get the best people into the jobs. But, there is a certain element of it, to my mind, where it's like, there's money being spent in ways that just doesn't make sense.
You're not seeing the benefit of that money.
Like, to use the example, like Monash University have just, built and constructed in the Clayton campus here in Australia, dozens of buildings.
You're not in the burger business. You're in the real estate business.
Basically. I mean, and some of them are student housing, which they can put students in for however much and charge them however much in addition to their tuition fees. Some of them are for education. Some of them are, and the big one for me, because like the big thing about that, which I can't wrap my head around, is at the same time they're gutting have gutted half the arts department.
Yeah. So there's no theatre department anymore, but we've got a brand spanking new theatre that we can rent out to people for cash.
Literally.
Yeah.
So what are you paying for with your degree? What do you actually, like, this is the thing that I struggle to wrap my head around, is what if you're paying $40,000 for a degree, what are you paying for?
What are you getting for
it? Is the knowledge you're getting out of that worth $40,000? Maybe if you're a lawyer or a doctor, maybe.
Well, I'm in the midst of doing my MBA at the moment, a Master's of Business Administration, and at the end of it, I'm going to have close to $50,000 worth of debt. That's in addition to my bachelor's, which is about $20-something thousand dollars that I've since paid off. But what we're talking about is, for me, who's someone who wants to participate in the economy, I'm starting with a $70,000 behind the starting line.
Yeah.
And that impacts that, like I've said before, there's an opportunity cost to that. Because I'm paying that money in debt, I'm not deploying it in other areas of the economy. It's a drag on productivity because I need to worry about servicing my debt before I can, buy a house, start a business. It just delays the onset of adulthood by, so much money. And the whole, with MBAs, they give you all the stats like, for every additional year at uni that you have, you're likely to make 8% more in wages, and over the length of your lifetime, this is how much more money that you're going to make, and all this. Like, it's part of the selling.
Advertising, though, it's not that data. Like, it would change from decade to decade.
There's
depending on the economy.
I've noticed though that a master's for business, corporate business, having a master's degree is now kind of like what having a bachelor's degree must have been like 30 years ago. It's like, it's now an entry-level requirement if you want to move up to any sort of managerial position, is you need to have a master's degree. And I was like, at what point does that end? Are we going to go masters and now you need to have a doctorate in order to clean the floors here? Like, it's an absurd kind of like arms race now for education. And you're right. I don't see what the value we add is necessarily of these universities, especially like, I don't feel like I've done all of my degree online, right? It's through a university. It's all online. I can't say that I've had $50,000 worth of education spent on me. And you start doing the maths, there's 6 online classes, 25 people a piece. They're each paying $4,500 a unit for this. It's real money that these organizations are raking in. And I don't know where it's going. Well, I do know where it's going. It's going into the pockets of a few very lucky people. Like, I had a friend of mine who was talking about, one of his jobs was selling into these large educational organizations a piece of software. And he said the administrators are driving around in Porsches. You know, that's a guy who is essentially like the business admin for this university 30 years ago is now a guy that's a millionaire. So like, clearly money is going into the system, and certainly enough money to affect the education of these people. But I don't think it's going into education, as you see the increasing casualization of tutors and, like part-timers, and they don't even call them like professors anymore. They're facilitators, and they're on rolling temporary contracts of, 8 weeks apiece. Right. So clearly the money is going in, but it's not coming out on the other end on the education side. We've got Jean-Jacques Gilbert _2 writing into the show saying it is also weird to imagine when education is such an important determining factor in the future of a country. Yeah, exactly. That's to my point earlier. This is how everyone's talking about growing productivity. How do we grow productivity? Because we've got a stagnating economy. We're not allowing immigrants in to top up our stagnating birth numbers. Like, we've got a labor shortage. This is how traditionally economies have improved their labor force and increased productivity, is by education. And not just like, aside from all the benefits of having like an educated populace for the purposes of democracy, like all the other side benefits of like having a good country, which is contingent on education, it makes it so much more difficult to get your start in life because you are weighed down by this debt. And if we can have the benefits of the education without so much of the debt part, I think that'd be really valuable, especially considering when you're young, when you're a 17-year-old kid, as I was, entering into a debt contract with the government that can't be cancelled, you're advised to just...
For now!
You're just advised to throw it on HEX. Don't worry about the cost.
Yeah.
You do what you want to do. We'll just throw it on HEX, or help debt as it's referred to now, and you pay it off later. I was told, don't look at the costs because you're borrowing the money and you'll pay it off over time. And I think that's a really dangerous precedent to set, especially considering how...
Especially for young kids who don't really know what they want.
I was a minor.
They've started four uni degrees.
What minor can you enter into a legally binding contract with that encompasses that the only way you can escape this debt is if you die or abscond to another country, like a war criminal fleeing Nazi Germany, is flying off to Argentina. Like, there are, like in America at least, there is no way to clear this debt via bankruptcy. It is the one area of debt that is excluded from bankruptcy protection. So no matter what you do, no matter how far you fall through the cracks, your life could be over, ruined. You're a heroin addict sucking dick on the streets. You've got not a single cent to your name. No, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
I know what you're saying.
Your life is ruined, but you still owe the government $40,000 from that arts degree that you did 30 years ago. Like, it's so crazy. It doesn't apply to anything else. Why education? Why does it have that exclusion? That's crazy.
Well, as you say, contract that can't be exited out of for now.
Yeah, until heads start rolling. Yeah, I really don't.
Yeah, where's your $40,000 now?
I really don't think that the older generations here in Australia have any appreciation for what it's like as a millennial or a Zoomer growing up in this country, and the difficulty, the headwinds, the economic headwinds that we face, in order to get by. When the median house price is $1 million, and you're saddled with 40 to 50 grand worth of debt just to get in the door, and wages have not increased in real terms in 20 years. It's like, well, how do you think this maths? Like, there's only so many avocado toasts you can forego. Like, you have to be foregoing avocado toasts for 2,300 years in order to use that to save up for a deposit on a house. Like, it is not easy to do this. And previous generations are just like, oh, just work your way through college. And it's like, well, when you were in college was $400. So like,
or free.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Or in my mum's case, she got paid to go to university because she was part of a low SES group and she lived a certain distance away from the university. So she got additional help from the government to get paid to attend university. Not only didn't graduate with debt, but actually had income, because it's to everyone's benefit if people are educated and can get better jobs and be more productive. Like, they saw it as the investment that it is, at least in the Hawke Keating era. And ever since then, it's just been this neoliberal just stripping of it's just bizarre. I don't understand it.
Yeah, in the Hawke Keating era, they saw it that way, but in this era, we just get the wank desk. Remember that? No one talks about the wank desk anymore, and I think that's wrong.
But maybe talking about wank desks is a little bit it's a little gross, so maybe that's why we don't talk about it.
Yeah, but it happened, Adam. I think that's something that should be talked about.
Maybe.
I don't know. Do you guys see, what do you guys see as the future of education here in Australia and America? Do you think this is going to make any sort of long-term difference, or?
Cancelling debt's got nothing to do with it. They need to work out fundamentally the purpose of university and stop turning them into businesses and get them back to their core. I don't know how you fix it. They're so broken at the moment. I've got no idea how they're going to... If you want to lower costs, I don't know how they're going to lower costs and make the focus more on education. I don't... Yeah.
What about the debt cancellation in particular? Do you think it's a good move or not? Or
it's a scratch on the surface. It's not going to fix anything in the long term.
I don't know. I think if you got 20 grand worth of debt and they'd say it's, hey, we're forgiving 20 grand worth of debt, I think that'd be pretty good for some people. I don't know. I'd be happy.
It's not fixing the structural problems in the system. Is my point.
It doesn't fix anything in the long term if it, as we sort of said before, if it's not met with also. It's one thing to be like, oh, we forgive all student, even if they went the whole hog, right? It'd be like, all right, we forgive all student debt. Anyone who has student debt, you don't have student debt anymore. And then the next group of kids who graduate year 12 want to go to uni then have to get loans. And now they have student debt. But everyone else doesn't because they forgave it. But if you still need to be paying that much for uni and need loans, then it just happens again. So, it has to be A, we've forgiven debt, and then B, education's free. It's like it has to free or affordable.
Yeah.
And then it's not a problem anymore. So you can't just do one.
What do you make of the argument that some people have made that I paid off my student debt and so it's unfair? What do you think of that?
Oh, well, 100 years ago, everyone had the Black Plague and now we don't. So 100 years ago, I pulled out of my ass, so maybe a little longer than that.
Probably like
sort of thing of
we 700 years ago.
Okay, Black Plague. I thought 1800s, wasn't there a weird plague? Anyway.
Different. That might have been a different plague. Black Plague was 1400s, if I recall.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I think the point still stands in the sense of back in my day, if we got a cut, we all died of infection. So you guys not dying from infection? That's not right. That's not real living. That's not real not hurting yourself. So, you shouldn't have it better than I did because it sucked. It's a fucked way of thinking. It's wouldn't you have wanted it to be better for yourself at the time if it could have been? So, I fucking hate that way of thinking of I had to pay off my debt. It's feasible. It's no. And also probably a lot of the people that say that also sort of are in more privileged positions to be like, oh yeah, well my parents helped me and all this sort of stuff. So that kind of thinking of it shouldn't be better for other people because it wasn't better for me is absolutely fucked, because there's so many other ways that things are better for us that it wasn't better for the people before us, and this should be no different.
I do get the... Yeah, I understand why someone would be annoyed by the situation if you just finished done, debt free, and then the day later, the next day you hear this announcement. I understand why you'd be annoyed, but I agree with you. This 100%. Is absolutely an area that, as a taxpayer, I am happy to fund. I would rather spend $100 billion on forgiving everyone's student debts here in Australia than a submarine program. That's going to take an indefinite amount of time to deploy and be of limited strategic use when it is. That seems like a better use of my taxpayer money to me. I don't know about you guys, but...
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Adam's I want this fucking submarine zone.
Adam's I think uni should be more expensive, to be honest.
I love a submarine.
Don't at me. Adam Christopher Doreen on Instagram. Don't at me.
We've been prattling on for a while. Let's wrap it up.
Let's do it. On that note, we have been and always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and motherfucking TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can fight me on Instagram at AC Doreen.
And you can follow us all down to the guillotines where not a single bourgeoisie shall be spared. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We will see you next week. Just to be clear, I am joking for legal reasons about spilling the blood of the bourgeoisie. I've got a mortgage. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.